in Makkah Mukarramah what happened to the Imam of the mosque during prayer. Seeing this, everyone screamed, Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum, viewers. This latest viral video from Saudi Arabia has made the heart of every Muslim bleed. What happened? That the Imam of the mosque fell crying during prayer, and then he said something that the listeners could not remain without being shocked. This faith-inspiring and heart-touching incident we will tell you in today's video, which happened with the Imam of the mosque in Makkah Mukarramah. Before starting the incident, if you are new to our channel, then subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so that you can be informed about every new upcoming video. So, friends, in Makkah Mukarramah, a very noble and respectable Imam of the mosque was appointed, who resided in a mosque built in the same area of Makkah Mukarramah. It had been 20 years since he was selected for this mosque, and for the past 20 years he had been performing his duties. His tone was extremely soft and he was kind to everyone. His wife had passed away 25 years ago. After that, he never remarried and devoted his entire life to the remembrance of God and spent the rest of his life in the mosque. He kept remembering Allah at all times and advised people to do the same. In these 20 years, he had never once bought anything to eat with his own money. Whenever it was time to eat, someone would bring food from their home and give it to the Imam of the mosque, and he would eat it and thank God. But for the past week, a very strange incident was happening. Whenever the Imam of the mosque sat down to eat dinner, a beggar would come to the mosque door and say, "For the sake of God, give me something to eat. I am very hungry. You will struggle, and God will give you double blessings." The Imam of the mosque, who had not even eaten lunch today because he was busy teaching children, was in a bad state of hunger. He had only taken 2 bites when he heard the beggar's voice outside. He looked at the food. The bread was broken from 2 sides. He felt ashamed, and after thinking for a while, he walked towards the beggar and said, "Oh Baba, forgive me. If I had known that you were coming, I would have kept this food for you earlier. But I have only taken 2 bites. When I heard your voice, I left the food." When the beggar heard this, he smiled and said, "May you be blessed, but I want you to give me half of the bread and eat half yourself." The Imam of the mosque insisted a lot, but the beggar took half the bread and left. The Imam of the mosque also ate the other half and thanked God and lay down to sleep right there. The next day, once again, when he finished the Isha prayer and his recitations, suddenly a boy from the neighborhood brought food for him. As soon as he started eating, another beggar passed by. This was not the same beggar from yesterday. He entered the mosque and started crying. The Imam of the mosque was about to eat when he saw this man praying and noticed his condition. His clothes were torn and he was in a very bad state. When he finished his prayer, the Imam of the mosque walked towards him and said, "Brother, is everything all right?" The man started crying and said, "I have been hungry for 2 days. I have not eaten anything. I am in a terrible state. I have a 2-year-old daughter at home who is writhing in hunger, but I have no job and no food to feed my child." When the Imam of the mosque heard this, he gave his food to the man and said, "My brother, I only have this. If I had more food, I would have given you more." The man thanked him. The Imam of the mosque had a few rials in his pocket, which he placed in the man's hand and said, "Never lose hope in God. He will surely find a way for you." The man left while praying for the Imam of the mosque. A few days passed like this. One day, after the Asr prayer, the Imam of the mosque was still making supplications when he heard someone crying outside the mosque. The Imam of the mosque completed all his recitations and then walked towards the door. There was a vagrant man standing there, dressed in tattered old clothes and in a filthy condition. People were shunning him, and some were even picking up stones and throwing them at him, chasing him away. When the Imam of the mosque saw this scene, he started stopping the people and walked toward the man. He said, "What happened? Why are you crying, and why are you in such a miserable state? You look quite decent. Why don't you work and fix your condition?" The man started crying and said, "My kidneys are failing. I'm going to die soon. I have only a few days left. I have nothing to eat. If possible, please help me so that I can fulfill my last wish before dying." When the Imam of the mosque heard this, he fell into deep thought. He was a very God-fearing person. He checked his pocket and saw that he had some money, which he had saved to buy some things for orphan children. He was just about to give this money to... So the man said, "I am addicted to drinking alcohol, and I haven't had a drink in several days. If you give me money, it will fulfill the last wish of a dying man." When the Imam of the mosque heard this, he immediately took the money back and said, "Beware, I can never give you this lawful money to be spent on something forbidden. People donate this money in the name of God, and I would never want it to be used for such a filthy act." Saying this, the Imam felt disgusted and quickly returned to the mosque. The man was furious because he could not tolerate this at all. The Imam, who was known for speaking with kindness to everyone in the area, had treated him harshly. This thought began to bother him inside. He started believing that the Imam was a hypocrite who only pretended to be kind to people, while, in reality, he was nothing like that. The real flaw, however, was in his own thinking. The next day, when the Imam stepped outside, the man was waiting for him. He had brought some ink with him and threw it on the Imam's clean white clothes, staining his face and garments. Then he began mocking him and speaking nonsense. But the Imam did not say anything in response. That evening, during Maghrib prayer, the same man, who belonged to no particular religion, entered the mosque while the congregation was praying. His intention was to harm and humiliate the Imam. As he observed the mosque, he saw the Imam standing in prayer. He held a sharp object in his hand and tried to attack the Imam, but just as he was about to strike, he slipped and fell face first onto the floor. Despite the loud noise, the Imam did not break his prayer or turn to look. The man, now angrier, got up and tried again to attack the Imam. But before he could do anything, his hand froze in midair. He became completely still, motionless like a statue, until the prayer was completed. Seeing him standing lifeless, the Imam became concerned and tried to shake him, but the man was completely rigid, as if there was no life left in his body. He was immediately taken to the hospital, where doctors were left in shock. What kind of condition was this, where his body had become so stiff after death that forcing any movement could break his bones? Everyone was terrified, and people began reciting prayers for forgiveness. Many believed that because the man had tried to insult such a righteous and pious person, God had given him such a dreadful death. However, despite everything, the Imam still prayed for him and said, "My Lord, I have forgiven this man." That night, the Imam saw a dream in which the man was being punished in his grave, lashed repeatedly. But as soon as the Imam's prayer for his forgiveness was made, the angels stopped punishing him and disappeared.